winners. How'd you do last week? How about a crazy week, right? In the first half, people are texting me going, hey, your Giants are going down, man. I had the Giants in like 8 survivor pools. And Denver on the other side, you're looking at going, all right, money in the bank. Now, I've played survivor for 30-some years. I knew better. I don't think the Giants are out. I definitely don't think Denver is safe. And then when Washington came back, scored that touchdown at the end of the second half, and then got the 2-point conversion, I'm going, Denver's going to blow this game. And on the other side, I felt like the Giants would come back. In fact, here's your 6 survivor plays that I had. I got 6 teams in my biggest pool. I have about 25 survivor teams. Maybe it's too much. Am I addicted to this dumb game? I don't know. Anyways, you can see 4 of them won. Now, in this pool, we have revivals you can rebuy in week 2, and that was my plan. I played revival strategies. As you can see there, I took Houston in one of them. I said, pick Houston or Indy. If you win, beautiful. If you lose, you just rebuy that team. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong side, and I'll have to rebuy it. Now, in my top 5 plays, how did we do last week? You can see we did okay, but not as good as week 1. We're 7-3 on the year. That's pretty good. But getting back to the Giants loss, they were one of my big plays at -4.5. Now, what I did, when the Giants got down 21-0, I still felt like they were coming back because Arizona is the worst team in the league right now. I went into live betting and took the Giants +8 in live betting, so I at least covered some of my losses on my original play with the Giants there. But you can see the top 5. Seattle-Detroit over was pretty easy. We talked about how they scored 90-some points last year, and I felt like they were going to score a ton this year. And you can see I moved that Seattle team total up into the top 5. The more I thought about it, that was my biggest play of the week, actually. I just kept thinking, there's just no way they're not scoring at least 21. And I made them my biggest play of the week. Jacksonville total over 23.5. Wow, Kansas City's defense shut them down. That was 8 straight that Jacksonville had like 27 or more points. That went down the tubes. Danny Jones rushed for over the 35.5 yards pretty easily. He was well over 50 yards. I don't know what he finished at even, but you know how it goes. Once you get over your number, you're excited. You don't keep track anymore. In the bonus plays, Philly first quarter won, Philly first half won, and they were the top team winning first half and first quarters last year. And so in most instances, I'm going to continue to play that until that trend sort of dies. Jacksonville +3, that was a bad play. Kansas City smacked them. Detroit team total over 26.5. I told you I was heavy on that over in that game, and fortunately it came through. I don't know why, though. I was never worried about it. And then the Jets +8.5. Ooh, yeah, I was dead wrong on that one. There's my picks in the primary pool again. You can see I have the 2 losers. I revived both of them, so I will have 6 plays going forward. There are no more revivals in this pool. You can see how we did last week, 728 entries now, 1224 remain, 223 eliminated, almost 13%, but that is way lower than last year in week 2 when we had over 25% hit the bricks. Top win choices were Buffalo, Dallas, Giants, Frisco, Philly, New Orleans. Top loss choices, Detroit and Denver crush people. Houston, you can see people playing the revive strategy. The Bears, and the same for Arizona. Our metrics for Survivor, you can see home teams still really struggling. 7-9 last week. They're now only winning 40% of games. 13-19 on the year. That's way down. Favorites are way down too. Although they were 10-6, they're 56%, still 10 points off their norm. And you can see home favorites, train wreck, under 500 at 47%. Away favorites, the only things doing well at 9-4. 69% is much higher than their normal 63. That's really strong. Away favorites are the way to go so far. Thursday night, we get a winner, get back on track 1-1. And top 5 survivor pool choices went 4-1 last week. That's a solid week. That's where it should be, honestly. Here against the spread. These are against the spread now. Home teams and favorites struggling mightily. You look at home favorites, 26%. They've been a disaster. Away favorites have been great. 54% winners. That's pretty freaking good. The over-under. Now this, we're got a whole slide dedicated to this coming up. But as you remember, last week, the under went 12-4. This week, the over went 13-3. I've never seen a flip like that in my 8 million years of watching the NFL. 6-point favorites against the spread do well. They're at 60%. But 6-point favorites are now 6-0. Last year, they were 6-6 through week 2. You're going to see this week it is a very chalky week. Very chalky. A lot of big favorites. Your home and away favorites straight up with the spread numbers in mind. You can see home favorites of 0 to 3 points, not good. 3.5 to 5.5 points, even worse. 6 to 9.5 points, though, 5-0. So the home favorites given more than 6 points have been rock solid. Everything else, kind of a disaster. Away favorites, you see 4-4 at the low number. 3.5 to 5.5, they're doing well, 4-0. And then they just had a 1-0 as a 6-point favorite, okay? Now, against the spread, take a look here. Home favorites against the spread from 0 to 5.5 points, they are 2-12. Poof. At 6 to 9.5 points, they're doing okay at 3-2. Now, the away favorites, you can see there from 3.5 to 5.5 points are 3-1. That's probably your best play for favorites. Here's our schedule for week 3. First, you're going to notice a lot of chalk, a lot of big-time favorites. You know, last week we identified several non-playoff teams to maybe pick in Survivor. This week, we're not recommending any. This is a chalk week. Find yourself a winner and get on through. Kansas City is a 12.5 point favorite. Dallas is a 12-point favorite. Frisco is a 10-point favorite. Others over 6-point favorites. Got Baltimore at 8. Buffalo is over 6. Miami's over 6. Seattle is over 6. And then Jacksonville at 9.5. We only have 4 home dogs this week. This could be a super chalky week. We'll see. However, I'm going to warn you. You know, we talked about those 6-point favorites. Last year we're 6-6 at this time. This year they're 6-0. We know that 6-point favorites lose 1.25 times per week on average, okay? We're due for one of these teams to get beat. We are due for one of those big teams to get beat. All right, let's look at our week 2 trends, which are just flopping and falling apart. Our away losers, okay? This stat, if you lost in week 1 and went on the road, those teams only won like 28.5% of the time. This year we had 7 teams, they went 4-3, crushed the trend. So you can see now in the last 3 years, these teams are 11-11. So this trend is kind of getting out of its bad zone because it was worse than 28.5% when we first looked at it. Home winners, same thing going on here. I mean, they win 80% of the time. This year, 4-3. That's not very good. So you can see they're 11-11 the last 2 years. This trend's kind of hitting the skids as well. The double dog do ya. This is where we would take a home team coming off a win. They win 80% of the time. Against an away team coming off a loss, they lose 72% of the time. But you can see this year, 2-2. Detroit was the one that stumped us. They had the lead. They were winning. Should have won the game. Detroit ended up losing, and it goes 2-2. I mean, Jacksonville loses to our Super Bowl champs, Kansas City, in case he was a favorite. So that one you're not so shocked by. Here, take a look at this. Week 2, home favorites off the loss. They've been 8-1 the last 2 years. This year they go 1-2. Buffalo, the only winner. They definitely handled Las Vegas, but Cincinnati gets beat, and we kind of talked about how we thought that could be a potential upset. But Denver should have won, and they threw the game away. I mean, they jump out to 21-3 lead and end up losing it. All right, this week we're going to look at a different trend here. These aren't major ones, but you will want to see one of them. Okay, 2-0 teams. 2-0 teams at home are 63% winners. You can see we have 5 of those this week. 3 of them are pretty big favorites. 2 of them are dogs, Tampa and Washington. In fact, they're pretty big dogs against good teams, Buffalo and Philadelphia. But if they go 3-2, that pretty much hits your trend. 2-0 teams away win less than 50% of the time. We have 4 of them this year. So they should go 2-2. So 2 of these 2-0 teams should get beat. You can see last year, we had 3 big-time 2-0 teams, and they went 1-2. Buffalo and KC got beat. KC went to Indianapolis as a huge favorite and lost. And Philadelphia did win to make it 1-2. 2-0 teams against the spread, they win 48% of the time against the spread, right? Let's look at the 0-2 teams now. 0-2 teams at home, they actually win 50% of the time. So the 0-2 teams, half of them get off the schneid and get a victory. Last year, they went 3-0, as you can see there. This year, we have 3 of them, Cincy, Arizona, Minnesota. It's going to be hard for me to think that Arizona can win, but who knows? 0-2 teams away win 40% of the time. Last year, they did go 2-2, though. So the 0-2 teams on the road went 2-2 last year. We have 6 this year. But here's the big thing I want you to see. 0-2 teams against the spread, they're almost 60% winners against the spread. Last year, they went 5-2. Last year, 5-2. Had you just thrown 100 on all 7 of them, you'd go 5-2. Nice little payday, right? 0-2 teams get the spread. We've got 9 of them this year. All right, here's some information on the over-under and scoring we're going to throw at you because last week, 796 points. We averaged 49.75 for the week. That is the biggest scoring week we've had in 2-3 years. In the last 5 years, that's the 9th highest weekly total we've had. It's the 15th highest weekly average, the 49.75 per game that we've had. Last year, our highest week was week 4 at 787 points. So we've already beaten last year's high total. In the last 5 years, here's something to take a look at. We've had 87 weeks. Out of those 87 weeks, weeks where we had more overs than unders. In other words, the overs were over 500, right? That only happened 27 times, 31% of the time. You can see there where they tied. In other words, they went 8 and 8 on the week, for example. 16 times, about 18%. More unders than overs. So the under had a better record than the overs. That happened 44 times, over half the time that happened. And if you take a look down at that bottom statistic, okay, this is where unders actually won at least 60% of the games. So in a 16-week schedule, that means they went at least 10 and 6. That happened 26 times, basically equal to where overs went at least 9 and 7 in that same example. Okay? So the unders have been on fire, but last week, 13 and 3 overs, a huge over week. Will it continue? Now, here's some other things to take a look at in terms of scoring. In week 1, which is kind of normal, we only had 3 teams score 48 points or more. In week 2, look at that, 11 teams. That is a ton. It was a huge scoring week, okay? One other thing to take a note of, and we bring this up because we're getting into weeks 4 and 5. And if you take a look at the highest average scoring weeks over the past 5 years, weeks 4 and 5 are 2 of the 3 weeks. Week 4 is the top scoring week. Okay, you can see the number there, averaging 49 points per game in week 4. And then week 5 is right there in third. And the weird one is week 14 in second. But that's what we talked about last week, where it seems like it's been lately, weeks 1 and 2 are kind of a little off, although week 2, not this year. Week 3 ramps up, and then week 4 becomes our highest scoring week. Week 5 is right up there. Then it kind of tapers off at about week 9 or 10. We get a combination of offensive injuries and the defense catching back up to the offense towards the end of the year. And you can see the 3 lowest scoring weeks are 11, 13, and 15, which really makes week 14 strange as a high scoring week. Okay, let's take a look at our worst 5 teams right now, because as we talk about with Survivor, it's more important to look at how do we beat up the week rather than worrying about picking the best teams to win. Bottom 5, Arizona, Houston, Chicago, Carolina, Indy, same 5 as last week. By the way, the next 2 are Las Vegas and Denver right now. These are according to Vegas odds, all right? Top 5 offenses and defense, it's probably too early to really look at this, but just to get a quick gauge, I want to show you something. Miami obviously has a top offense. They're just running on all cylinders. That passing game, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, unbelievable, getting it done. The shocking one, though, is the Rams. Puka, I know I'm mispronouncing his name, but I love calling him Puka. The guy's been phenomenal. He's just stepped right in for Cooper Kupp and done the job. And the Rams are kicking it. I think that's the biggest shock on the offensive side. The other teams there, we pretty much figured. Top passing team, Miami. Rushing team, Cleveland. Cleveland was one of the top 3 rushing teams last year. The Bears were number 1 last year. They're not close this year because Justin Fields hasn't been running the ball. We'll talk about that later. Top 5 defenses, Dallas has owned it. However, I want you to think about something. In that Monday night game, Cleveland's defense was great. Deshaun Watson had the 3 turnovers, which killed him. 2 Pittsburgh returned for touchdowns. But George Pickens catches that 71-yard pass. If they don't have that play, Cleveland's the number 1 defense in the league right now. Atlanta and New Orleans are shocking us at 2-0. Of course, their schedules have been fairly easy, so we'll see how that starts to ramp up. And then Buffalo is in there again. Number 1 pass defense, Dallas. Number 1 rush defense right now is Philly. But Philly's pass defense has not been too good this year so far. All right. Let's get back to week 3 here. We'll start off with the dog report. We look at the dog report because in 33% of games, dogs win straight up. So for your confidence pools, you always got to think about that. So we always try to come in here in a 16-game schedule. We want to pick 5 or 6 dogs that could potentially win because you got to think about those things for confidence pools and for Survivor. So you can see on the home dogs, Tampa Bay could win. Philly has jumped out to leads in each of the first 2 games, but they've given up 300 passing yards in both of the first 2 games to Mac Jones and then to Kirk Cousins. So, and Tampa's looked okay. Their defense is much better than Minnesota's. Baker Mayfield has been pretty good. Mike Evans has been great, so I can't count him out. But my biggest one there is the Jets. I just think we got to give Zach Wilson a little bit more time, get him out of these big defensive games. The Jets should run the ball more. I don't understand what they were doing last week, but if they come out throwing again, I'll be disappointed. I think Breece Hall has looked really good. Why are you throwing it so much with Zach Wilson? But we'll see. So I do think the Jets have a shot to beat New England this week and bounce back. Road dogs, the ones I like the most, Atlanta. Detroit kind of shocked us by losing to Seattle last week. And Atlanta's 2-0, played pretty well. Here's the thing. Atlanta is a very good in fact, these are 2 of the 5 best offensive lines. So if Atlanta should get a lead, and they have a great ground game, they run that ball, they could take the wind out of Detroit's sails and chew the clock. New Orleans and Green Bay, we said they have a shot to lose, and they did. But coming back home, I think Jordan Love's looked pretty good, and I think they will win, but you got to give New Orleans a shot. Their defense is one of the top 10 and playing pretty well. Cincinnati, now like I said, Joe Burrow is still going to ramp up. It's going to take him a few games, and you got a Rams team that comes in that's been shockingly good. So wouldn't be crazy to see the Rams win that game. And then the final one down there is Pittsburgh and Las Vegas. Pittsburgh, they got playmakers. Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt. Obviously, the defense scored twice last week. Las Vegas, kind of played like we figured Las Vegas would last week. So I give Pittsburgh a shot there, right? The bottom game, the Chargers of Minnesota, I want nothing to do with. As I've told you, those 2 teams have screwed me in Survivor more than any 2 teams. I don't really want to go near that game. All right, here we go with our Week 3 in plays. These are the playoff team options. And look at that slate, how chalky it is. We have 7 teams. All are greater than 6-point favorites. My number 1 choice, Kansas City. Now, I think the Bears will come out and play a lot better than they have. Last year, the Bears were the number 1 rushing team in the NFL. And that was because Justin Fields was rushing for almost 100 yards a game. You can tell the coaches don't want him doing that, don't want him running as much because he did get hurt at the end of the year. And we know that's what will happen if you run your quarterback too often. Okay? But at some point, the Bears have to go, our offense is just god-awful. It's got to get better. And it's probably going to mean Justin Fields is going to have to run a little bit more than he has. You got Chris Jones, and that Kansas City line will be attacking the Bears. So I think Fields will have to take off more. It actually plays into the Bears' hands because if he runs more, it makes the Bears' offense good. It makes them better. But I like Kansas City, obviously, to win this game. Number 2, San Francisco. They've just been so good. The Giants, for the first 6 quarters of the season, were so god-awful, I don't know what to say. They finally woke up in the second half, but now you're going to go against the San Francisco defense. It's actually good. Arizona is not good, okay? And the Niners' offense is really good with Brock Purdy. I think Purdy stays undefeated in the regular season as a starter for San Francisco. Number 3, I'm going Jacksonville. Hugely disappointing last week, but it was against the Super Bowl champs, right? Now you come back against Houston. Here's one caveat. Houston beat Jacksonville 9 straight times. 9 straight, count them. Until Jacksonville beat them 31-3 last year. That was when Jacksonville started putting up 30 points a game on offense and really clicking. I think Jacksonville continues it here. They'll bounce back, get an easy victory. Number 4, I put Dallas. Now, normally, I would say Dallas could have a letdown game. They've been sensational the first 2. You're going up against the worst team in the league, and you could have a letdown game. But you got an easy situation for the coach to go, don't go in there and do what the Giants just did. Come in ready to play. The defense should just clock this team. And then if the offense could just put up 14 points in the first half, this game's over, right? So you got to like Dallas. 5th, I like Baltimore. They've been rock solid, probably the most solid team in the league this year. Game 1, handle Houston, 25-7, easy win. Game 2, go to Cincinnati as a dog, beat them pretty well. And now game 3, you got an Indy team coming in. Anthony Richardson running quarterback. But Baltimore sees that every day in practice with Lamar Jackson. They're not going to be scared of that. I think Baltimore handles them easily. Team 6, Miami. Denver is just on the ropes. Now Sean Payton's feeling the pressure of Russell Wilson's train wreckishness. Is that a word? Russell Wilson has got to get... How do you blow that game last week? The offense did not keep scoring. They stunk. And now you're going against the best offense of football. And Miami's going to keep scoring. I like Miami. Number 7, Seattle. Coming off that Detroit win, should easily handle Carolina, but who knows? I will say this, again, 6-point favorites and higher. Right now, we're 6-0 this year. Last year at this time, we were 6-6. They lose 1.25 times per week on average. I have a feeling one of these 6-point favorites, and that includes Buffalo on the next page, is going to get beat this week. You got to decide which one or two is it going to be. Someone's going down. We have no in-plays on non-playoff teams this week. Last week, of course, we had a bunch of them that I liked. I said take advantage of it because we're going to come into weeks like this week where you got to be chalky and just take the chalk and win. On the maybes, though, I got Buffalo and Philly, but they're on the road. Washington's 2-0. Tampa's 2-0. And Buffalo and Philly have had their shaky moments this year. So you just don't know if turnovers could come about. And one of those teams, Washington, Tampa Bay, could take advantage of it. Their defenses seem okay. Both those teams have found ways to win. So you would think Buffalo and Philly are both going to win these games easily, especially if they don't have turnovers. Detroit, Green Bay, and Cleveland. Detroit, I like them at home against Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta's all that great. However, like we said, Atlanta has a good rushing offense. Atlanta's offensive line is very good. If they do get a lead, Cleveland at home, I do trust them. I'm a Tennessee fan. Loved watching them beat the Chargers last week. Tennessee tends to do well against the run. They're terrible against the pass. I think Deshaun Watson needs a get-right game, especially after last week's game. I think he's going to sling it around a bit here, and I like Cleveland to take this one down and win this one. The risky games, there's 4 of them. I wouldn't go near Chargers, Minnesota. Not a chance. Rams at Cincinnati. We can get Cincinnati later in the year at a better place. That looks way too hard. I'm not going to be shocked if the Rams go in and win that. New England, the Jets, way too risky. I could see either one winning that. And Pittsburgh at Vegas, I could see Pittsburgh beating Vegas. I could see Vegas winning. So I'm not touching any of those games. There's my picks in the primary pool. You can see here. I'm going super chalky. All 6 are in. I've revived the 2 losers from last week. You can see I'm going to go Jacksonville, Miami, Baltimore, Dallas, San Francisco, KC. I'm going to stay away from Buffalo and Philly and probably Seattle. Although I don't blame people going Seattle. The rookie quarterback from Carolina coming in there could have some problems on the road. Okay, here's Cheezeman top 5 plays from last week. You see, we went 3-2 or 7-3 year to date. Who are my top 5 plays this week? Week 3. Here's what I like. I like the Kansas City Chicago over. Now I know the Bears, haven't been scoring like they did last year, but in both those games, they scored more than 16.5 points. And even though Kansas City's defense is good, I have a feeling Justin Fields is going to run the ball more this week. And when the Bears do that, they score. They were a good scoring team last year when Fields did that towards the end of the year until he got hurt. So I like the Chicago team total over 16.5. I do like the over in this game. I think Kansas City should finally hit 30. Mahomes will get it on track and get 30. I'm going back to well with Jacksonville. Team total over 26.5. I think they get back on track to where they were getting 28, 30 points a game, especially at home against a Houston team that's been struggling, especially against a run. Jacksonville should get a lead and have their way, just like everybody else has. Baltimore, I like them, -8. I just think Baltimore has been solid this year. Their defense is good, and the offense is going to score enough points to take care of things. Indianapolis, they got the win last week against Houston, and they didn't look that good against Jacksonville, and I think Baltimore will easily beat them by 10 or more. And then Cleveland -3, I like. Like I said, I think Cleveland's undervalued and underrated, and people are jumping all over Deshaun Watson for having a bad game last week. But you look at that game, really 2 plays turned around. If Deshaun doesn't get the weird pick, a tip ball pick that goes for a touchdown, and then the George Pickens 71-yard touchdown pass, because Cleveland shut down Pittsburgh otherwise, Cleveland wins that game. I think they come home and handle Tennessee pretty easily. I like them here. Bonus plays, I'm going to stick with Philly first quarter. I'm not going to go first half this week because I think Tampa Bay is playing pretty well. I'm going to take the first quarter, though, because Philly tends to jump out on you. Stick with that trend for now. I'm going to take Deshaun Watson over 237 passing yards against Tennessee. Everyone else has done it this year, so why shouldn't Deshaun do it? I think he can get there easily. And Tennessee does tend to stop the run. Now, Kareem Hunt was signed today by the Browns. That's a good thing for them. And Jerome Ford looked pretty good. But Tennessee tends to stuff the run, but they give up a ton of passing yards right now. So I think Deshaun continues that, and he needs a good get-right game throwing the football. Jacksonville -9.5. I'm going to do it. They beat Houston at home 31-3 the last time they played, and I think they're going to take it out on them because they played really poorly last week against Kansas City. They're going to want to get it back going again. I'm going to go with that Atlanta team total over 21.5. Going into Detroit. Again, I don't trust Detroit's defense, so I think that game will turn into a bit of a shootout. And then Seattle team total over 23.5. I don't think Carolina can really stop teams. Seattle can run the ball well with Kenneth Walker. and they can throw it with their two receivers, I think, a lot better than New Orleans did. And New Orleans' offensive line just looked awful last week. I think Seattle's will play at least a little better. You can see my picks in the primary poll once again. We're talking about all playoff teams this week, guys. And like I said, you want to get through week 4. Just survive in advance. Don't get cute this week. Things are so chalky. I would find the chalk and go with it. I tried to avoid my Super Bowl picks, but you can see I took them in some of the pools. It's just the way it is, and that's how we're going to roll this week. Hey, thanks to CooperGroup.com, our sponsor. Check out their drumsticks, golf grips, baseball bats. This has been NFL Survivor Week 3 Pick and Winners with the Cheezeman. We appreciate you being here. Good luck, and we hope you survive.